Hello, everybody. You have reached Unstoppable Tracy. It is super exciting for me to be sharing these conversations with you when I can't be face to face with everybody. This way, I get to be face to face with everybody. Another way of exceeding the impossible with Unstoppable Tracy. And, so often people say to me, well, Tracy, you're unstoppable. What about me in my shoes who sometimes gets faced with no? And the reality is, I am faced with no every single day. Many days, multiple times a day. And I have complete respect for no. It's just working around what will work until you figure out that it's yes for everybody. And probably the most resonating story for me that has to do with this was right after I got laid off at Shoppers Drug Mart. It was an incredible job that I loved. They were good people, and it was pharmaceutical reform. They laid off over 80 people. And I remember getting out to my car, and it was around lunchtime, and I was distraught. I was emotional, I was crying, and I'm a firm believer on what you focus on grows. And so I did not want to focus on being sad anymore. And so I was trying to think, what will make me focus on something positive? And for me, immediately, that was sailing. And it was October. And so I was Googling and looking for somewhere, where could I go sailing? And there was this regatta, this race in San Diego. And in reality, I had never really raced, definitely never raced outside of Canada. But I wanted to sail, and I desperately wanted a pick-me-up. And so I Googled, and I found a flight to San Diego that day, Friday, at 5:30 p.m. And so I was laid off at 11:30 a.m., and I was on a plane to San Diego at 5:30 p.m. And I show up at San Diego Yacht Club, and I say, I'd like to register. And they say, we're sorry, it's full. There's no way. And the guy behind me in line said, oh, actually, I'm here to tell you that my friend is unable to make it. And he said that he would donate his spot if there was a sailor with a disability that wanted to jump in. And then the woman said, well, that's fine and dandy, but do you have a boat, Tracy? And I said, I don't have a boat. And the guy behind me again jumps in. He says, you can use my friend's boat. And it wasn't a boat that I had sailed before, but it had a mainsail and it had a jib sail. I figured, how hard can that be? I knew the basics. And so the very first day, we practiced start lines and got to know the boat a bit. And the very first race on my second day, I got a bullet. I got a gold. And I couldn't believe it. And the U.S. Paralympic coach came racing over in her coach boat. And she's like, where have you been? I've never seen you before. What's your name? And I'm like, I'm Tracy. And she said, wow, that was great. I want to talk to you after the races. I'm like, okay, super excited. I don't even know properly that she's the U.S. Paralympic coach at this time. And she says, before we talk, I've connected you to the media. They want to talk to some people about today's regatta, and I suggested they talk with you. So I'm on the media, and I'm talking to NBC News, and they say, so hello, Tracy, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm Tracy from Toronto. And my U.S. coach says, what? And she was so disappointed that I wasn't an American to be on the U.S. Paralympic recruitment team posse, potentially. But it did instill in me this idea about, and I learned about, and I'd never known about before. How did I not know all these years that there were Paralympics for sailors? So I was going to do my best to figure it all out. Well, I was there in San Diego when Hurricane Sandy hit New York particularly hard, which so many of us know about. And the flight home was a little bit turbulent. And I had worked at Air Canada for 8 years, and I was confident that despite turbulence, the flight would be fine. But when we were landing, the plane was nuts. This tall man was like thrown across the aisle. And he got back in his seat, and we all did our seatbelts up, and I actually was nervous for the first time in my life in a plane. And I kind of felt bad that I had just lost my job and I'm spending money flying off willy-nilly to San Diego to sail. So I sort of say, universe, I promise I'm going to crack down, I'm going to behave, I'm going to find myself a job and no more flying all over the place. And the plane totally dipped completely over. And things were falling out. One of the things opened up and it was nutters. And I 100%, I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. And I'm like, forget that. If I'm going to die, I'm going to pursue the dream that I want to have, which was I wanted to pursue my Paralympic dream as a Canadian. And the plane went, doo. And it was beautiful and it was smooth and we had a safe landing. So that was about 5:30 on Sunday night. And so I got home, and by 7:30 on Sunday night, and I was laid off on Friday, I'm like phoning around trying to figure out who's the Canadian Paralympic folk. And I got a couple of names, Danny McCoy and Rick Waters, and I was asking them, what do I got to do to pursue this Paralympic dream? And both of them were very generous. They're like, oh, I'm so proud that you went down there. It's so great. You got a bullet. But realistically, Tracy, you'd need thousands of dollars, and you'd need tens of thousands of hours in a boat, and you'd need your own boat. They said, in fact, you don't even need high-performance Paralympic coaching. You would need like Olympian-level gold coaching. And there's just no way, Tracy. But I love that that was your dream. And I said, well, who sort of would do that kind of thing in the Olympic gold world? And they told me about Magnus Lidjedal. They told me about this gold Olympian that was a Paralympic sports club now, that had a soft spot and was a willing supporter of people with high potential, and particularly people with disabilities. So I said, well, thanks. It was fun daydreaming with you. And I hung up the phone, and despite them saying no, I put all my things on Kijiji. I put my couch on Kijiji. I put my bed on Kijiji. I put some artifacts on Kijiji. And then I started trying to find Magnus. And I was sure he would say yes. And he didn't. He didn't even reply. Not on Twitter, not on Facebook, not on email, not on the telephone number on his website. I kept packing. My sister came down. I think her heart was devastated and very worried for me. But her reaction was angry. She said, how dare you go off like that? That's totally, going to leave all of us in the lurch. What are we going to all do? And I gave her all of the savings I had for my next 12 months rent. And I said, I'm not going to leave you in the lurch. And she said, well, if you're doing this, you're doing it on your own. I'm not helping you pack your car. And anybody that knows me knows how wonderfully supportive my sister is. And she ended up being wonderfully supportive. But the reality is, in that moment, she said, no way, Jose. Well, I did it all on my own. I remember I had my legs off, and I bummed my way, and I put my legs in the car. And I remember I forgot my tea kettle, and I love my tea. And I remember bumming into my car with my tea kettle, didn't put my legs on. And I went to Niagara Falls. It's been 5 days. Every day I reach out to Magnus, nothing. I get to Niagara Falls, Canadian side, where my phone data plan stops. And I ask one more time, on Twitter, on Facebook, on the phone, nothing from Magnus. So it took me 5 days of traveling south to Miami, Florida. And every night in my motel, I would get Wi-Fi, and I would reach out to Magnus again. And I got nothing. No email, no Facebook, no reply. So I get to Jacksonville, Florida, the north part of Florida, and I'm in my last motel. And it's been a bit of a scary journey, like filling up at gas stations without my legs on, and just seeing the different cities, and not being very good at directions, and just the whole journey had been scary. I'm wondering, what the heck am I doing? What have I taken on? And I Facebook Magnus one more time, and I got tears in my eyes like, am I on a dead journey here? And Magnus replies. Magnus writes back, not a lot. He just says on Facebook post, none of the other methods, but on the Facebook he says, if you come, we got boats. So I show up the next day, And sure enough, there's no Magnus. I'm looking for him all day. It's 9:30 at night in a parking lot, and I find somebody that knows him, and they say, oh, Magnus is out of town. And so it was kind of anticlimactic, and all the hotels I could find, even the motels, were like 250 American dollars. So I know I can't spend that because I have hardly any money at this point. And so I slept in my car in the parking lot. And I meet and find Magnus the next day. He's washing a boat. So I jump in and I grab a sponge from his sponge bucket, and I'm talking to him and I'm washing the boat with him. And then he's like, well, it's nice to meet you, Trace. I'll let you get settled in Miami, and when you've been here a while, we'll talk. And he's going off to the sailmaker, and I'm like, oh, can I come for the ride? And he's like, sure. And so I hear him talking to a sailmaker, and when we get back, I know he's got to make an invoice. So I offer, can I make a sail invoice for you, Magnus? And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. And so for 2-3 weeks, I'm helping Magnus with invoices, with washing boats, with running and getting his lunch, with anything at all that I can do that makes Magnus's life easier for like 3 weeks. And I don't have any time in a boat. And I'm wondering, I gave up everything and all my income and all my belongings to be washing boats. What am I doing? And I had a really low day. And then this businessman comes along and he approaches Magnus. And he says, I'd like to hire you because Magnus is a gold Olympian for the U.S. And Magnus can sail anything. If anybody's seen the movie Moana, when the coconut pirates are attacking Moana and he manhandles that boat all magically, well, that's Magnus in a boat. He can handle a 110-foot tall ship or an 8-foot boat. Doesn't matter the size, Magnus can manage it. So he knows he could support this guy no matter what. But this guy is adamant that Magnus needs crew. So Magnus says, well, she's my crew. And the man looks at me sitting there without my arms, without my legs. And he's like, she's your crew? He said, yep. Tell him you can sail. And I look at the man confidently and I say, yeah, I can sail. And Magnus doesn't care whether I can sail or not. He's now just got a body in the boat for this guy. So we go down to the dock. I help untie the boats. I set up the lines. I'm uncleating at the appropriate times. I'm tethering when he needs me to. And I'm transferring sides just the way he expects. And Magnus learns that I can sail a boat. And he says that when I get out of the boat and we say goodbye to the customer, Magnus turns to me and he says, I know boats and I know people. And just by the way you handle yourself around the boat, I know you can sail. Let's go. And we went for a sail for the first time. And so it's that whole idea of earning respect. Do you find yourself sometimes being underestimated, or people thinking you can't do something, or people actually trying to stop you from doing something that you believe is the perfect marketing idea or the ideal IT solution, or you really feel strongly that you've got to plan this before you launch it, or even better, you feel like you got to launch this before you plan it. And that's what I say, earn the respect, earn the independence, get out there and just be a support, and it'll come. You'll earn the independence to live your dream and to achieve it. Make those projects happen, make those sales happen, make those heartfelt decisions happen.